أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الخلق وسيد المرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم افتح لنا فتحا مبينا وارزقنا رزقا مباركا فيه. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما. رب اشرح لنا صدورنا ويسر لنا أمورنا واحلل لنا عقدة من ألسنتنا يفقهوا قولنا. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Inshallah, today we'll take up Surah Al-Ahqaf. And this is the last of the Hawami, the surahs that begin with the two letters of Hamim. So it's kind of a conclusion of a collection of surahs that hit on particular themes regarding the revelation of the Quran, its authenticity, and the consequences of disbelieving in the Quran. So what is special about Surah Al-Ahqaf and in comparison with Surah Al-Jathiyah or Surah Al-Jathiyah, Al-Zukhruf, Al-Dukhan? We've seen similar patterns or themes across these surahs, but also distinctions. So Surah Al-Ahqaf can be summed up with a phrase from one of the verses in it that says, Ajibu da'i Allah. Hurry up, hurry up. So there's a notion of time in this surah. Urgency. Urgency for what? What purpose? We're always kind of rushing headlong to do things in life. So this surah will highlight and emphasize what is that most worthwhile thing to race towards and to quickly answer before time runs up, which is da'i Allah, answer the caller. What caller? As we will see in the surah, it actually remains not necessarily mysterious, but profoundly presented. Da'i Allah is generic. It encompasses every single thing that reminds of Allah. The caller, the literal caller, Rasulullah Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the Quran, people around us, the phenomenon of like the passage of time, but it's also the call within us. The Quran, the heart's impulse inside that pulls us to Allah Azza wa Jal. Allah will never leave us to ourselves in this journey, I'm reminded. And Allah's message is in this surah, there is urgency because time is going to run out. Hurry up. Hurry up on this particular thing and race to answer the call of Allah Azza wa Jal before it is too late. Within this surah, we're going to see Allah Azza wa Jal highlighting very interesting features to every phenomenon and every single thing that He has created. He's going to show us how every single thing has purpose, and just purpose to it, and a just mission, from an entire entity like a human being to even a limb, a hand, a nose, a soul and a heart, a moon and a sun, a leaf, the movement of things. Every single thing created has a specific, very well-defined purpose and mission. And it has also next to it something else. Within this created realm, within the cosmos, it's going to have a specific term to it, a appointed term. No escape from it. You're going to have the two. As a whole and in the individual parts. Every single thing, living or non-living, although we understand from Islamic cosmology that every single thing is actually living, right? We just don't perceive it. Has a just purpose and a mission to it, and it has an appointed term. What Allah is stating in this surah is hurry up again, urgency, the supreme urgency that we have. To ensure that you fulfill, Allah's gonna, is telling us in this surah, everything is gonna fulfill its mission and purpose. For sure. Sooner or later, for someone like us who has choice, we have to make that decision to fulfill the purpose and the mission before what runs up or runs out. Not just time, the appointed term to you, because it's going to expire for sure. Even the heavens above, the sama, looks very, kind of, looks as if it's just minding its own business, like it has no purpose. It's just a thing up there. Allah says even that has a just purpose to it and an appointed term. And before its appointed term comes, where it really ends, it has to fulfill its mission. And you're going to witness this. Within the surah, Allah is going to answer the question of what happens then if a human being who has that volition and choice and limited will doesn't make the decision to answer the call of Allah Azza wa Jal, and of every single faculty and organ that He placed within us to remind us of Allah, to line up quickly for our own well-being and interest. What happens? Allah is going to show us that those who've indeed chosen not to comply with that call, but instead, because you and I have to answer some kind of a call in our lives. Either we answer the call of what's called Al-Haqq, truth, balance, the just ends that align with everything in nature, everything in creation is actually Haqq, truth, and the truth is Allah, right? Either that or there is an answer to another call, a call to something that we've spoken about in Surah Al-Jathiyah. Do you remember what it was? It had three features to it. It's vacuous, empty. It tumbles and makes someone fall, or makes them tumble and fall. And it leads to what's called Al-Hawiyah. Right? Al-Hawiyah is the abyss. One of two. What is that concept or a term in Arabic? Who remembers? Stairs. That's me. I said Hawiyah, right? From that word, connected to it, is it? Hawa. Remember Hawa? Hawa is air, in Arabic, Hawa. But Hawa is also women desire. We're going to be pulled in one of those directions, either Haqq, every single choice. Either Haqq, truth and justice to it, and it's calling us to something very solid and very anchored, or it's Hawa. Air in Arabic is connected to the notion of women desire, as we explained last time. And what is kind of distinct about air? It's vacuous, feels empty. It isn't, but it feels as such, right? And Hawa causes someone to fall and tumble, right? And it leads to a word related to it, which is Hawiyah, which is the abyss. Allah says, hurry up before it's too late, because if you don't, He's going to demonstrate in the surah, just as more consistent with the pattern of the Quran. He's going to bring up references to those who haven't done that, and they're mighty and strong and visible in our history. And He's going to specifically highlight the people of Ahqaf, because the title of the surah is what? Ahqaf, just translated as sand dunes, the molds of sand, the mounds of sand, that form with wind. And if you've lived near a desert, you'll see them. They're beautiful, right? Or you can go to West Coast, and not West Coast, like go to a state like Idaho, you'll see them. Beautiful. You'll see these hills of sand, right, forming because of the wind over time. So the surah entitled by this. Why call it with a place? We've seen surahs of the Quran entitled with a concept, with animals, insects, human beings' names, right? Historical events, nations' names, right? And in this case, a place within Arabia, in the south, around Hadramaut or in Yemen, that was a place where a people lived. And who are these people? Ad. And we're going to see numerous references to Ad. In this particular case, Allah is going to highlight how these people didn't respond in time, but instead chose to follow or comply with the call of Hawa. Right? And they're very arrogant about it. They're very mighty, and you might have thought that things will never catch up with them. That things will never catch up with them because a long time has passed before they really reach their end. So Allah's going to define for us in the surah what happens if we don't comply in time. He's going to show how indeed those that don't comply with the call of Allah Azza wa Jal, number one, لَيْسُوا بِمُعْجِزِينَ فِي الْأَرْضِ. Despite our perception, and one of the central questions of this surah is really injustice and lack of compliance with the truth. And every agent on this earth that does that, evil forces, evil tendencies, corruption on this earth, you might think that it will never reach its end or its appointed term. You might think that it can actually challenge the laws of Allah. Doesn't that question come up for us? What is one of the biggest sources of frustration for us on this earth? And one that really can drive a human being to despair. It's this frustration that things are not happening fast enough to restore a sense of peace and justice. Isn't it true? How often does it happen to you and me that we ask, when is their time going to come? Those people are so corrupt, bad, evil, causing such havoc on this earth, bloodshed. It seems as if really nothing can stop them. That's perception number one, that nothing can stop them. So Allah says, لَيْسُوا بِمُعْجِزِينَ فِي الْأَرْضِ. When it's all said and done, when that appointed term is reached, you're going to witness the fulfillment of Allah's promise. And you're going to witness for yourself how, when you look back at it, they were really never able to frustrate Allah's plan. It was all Allah's plan. Make sense? So when we're living in it, we might think they're actually getting away with things. That they're somehow actually defining Allah's laws, but they're breaking them, or they are essentially toppling the order of the heavens and the earth. They're not. They're not capable of changing Allah's plans in the least. You and I, because we're on this earth, we can't perceive it. Allah says there is a time when you and I, when the appointed term is over, means when life is over, you're going to witness it for yourself. When you look at the grand story and Allah's explanation of everything, is to make us witness everything. Witness the story. You yourself will conclude that they were never able to frustrate Allah's plans. But it's not evident then. Number two, Allah Azza wa Jalla tells us that when all is said and done and the appointed term is reached, right? When it's over, you're going to notice that these people that you thought were getting away with things were fi dalalin mubin. They were really the ones who were manifest error. Because people are confused over this now, isn't it true? How often do we argue and debate over who's right and who's wrong? And sometimes because of the pressures and because of fear, we might justify in our heads even evil things, right, that happen. Justify it because of fear, right? That it will be inflicted on us. So when things become twisted, Allah says that clarity over the ones who are really in manifest error will be evident to you. It will be so evident to you. You're going to see that we're in manifest error and they will see it for themselves. What else happened when the appointed term is reached? As the surah tells us, they're going to be evident what? Evident loss. They're going to be done with. Undone completely. Undone completely. And you're going to see one more thing. With the appointed term, there's an appointed term, as I said, for every single thing that is going to be reached within this life, but then an overall appointed term for the grand kind of, for the grand creation, so to speak, the end of time for everything. You know what? Notice Allah Azza wa Jalla says, and see for yourself that this truth that you're being called to, this haqq that you're being called to, this goodness that you're being called to has been vindicated completely. Vindicated completely. Every single thing that we might have had doubt about will be clarified. And that this goodness that was challenged and the truth and al-haqq and this revelation will be vindicated completely, but it's all going to happen when the manifestation of that reality will happen after the appointed term is over. Make sense? So the challenge is within the story, within life itself, can we see these things? Can we see these things? So the story of Ad is going to demonstrate that for us. But also Elijah is going to, present a beautiful contrast in this sort of parallels. You see the Quran talking about macro events, right? You talk about nations, historical events, big things, right? Nations rising and falling, ungodly communities challenging prophets, and then oops, they're in the Hawi. They fall into the abyss. So you notice big things happening. You might say, not me, right? I'm a little thing. Within this surah, Allah's going to match up a description of macro big events and phenomena happening of a nation falling as opposed to rising, of challenging Allah's revelation and haqq, etc., with something that resembles it on a micro level. And he'll talk in the surah about an ungodly child. An ungodly, unfaithful child rebelling against who? Against the haqq. And who? Specifically parents. Who are begging him to comply with the haqq, but he's being ungrateful and undutiful. You'll say, wait a minute. This is surah entitled Al-Ahqaf, sand dunes that stand as a witness to what happened to that community, that nation, thousands of years ago. Suddenly, within just couple of verses, Allah throws in a verse talking about an ungodly child being ungrateful to his parents and refusing and refuting their arguments to comply with Allah Azza wa Jalla and meeting his end. You say, why is that being mentioned right here? Actually, at first glance, I thought, very interesting. You know there's a reason for that, right? Reasons. But you still think it doesn't fit in. It does. Allah's matching up the contrast on the macro level, rising and falling of nations, godly versus ungodly, nations challenging prophets with an ungodly child challenging who? His parents. Are they related? Absolutely. As if to say, even the big things that happen on the face of this earth come down to what? Behavior of an individual, whether he or she is ungodly or godly. Whether he or she is grateful or ungrateful, and begins with what? The ultimate essence of nature. You know, speak of haqq. Haqq, brothers and sisters, presents itself as laws in creation. The cosmos are regulated by just laws. You might say, well, this is a law of gravity, law of motion, etc., etc. But what about laws that govern human relationships? They're also haqq. So a parent-child relationship is haqq. It is part of that nature that Allah has created. It has laws to it. Whenever a child is being grateful to his parents, they're complying within the laws of nature, the laws of al-haqq, right? And they are enabling essentially the maintenance of the justice of the heavens and the earth. And whenever even an act of undutifulness to a parent, can you imagine? Just that little act that seems little in our eyes, Allah is saying in this surah, it's equivalent to, or it's as if a nation has rebelled against the who? A prophet of Allah, and against revelation. They're no different, and it begins there. Because a child who does this becomes that nation at the end. They're all interrelated. That's why we always speak of home, right? That's why we speak of raising a generation, raising children, etc., etc. Because the consequences are pretty severe, and everything is interconnected. So you see within this surah, it's going to be like, inshallah, homework for all of us, a beautiful dua. A beautiful dua that also speaks of a human being as they mature, reaching that point in their lives when they understand that time urgency. So Allah's going to define in the surah the concerns and the priorities of people who grow older, and they start to reflect on those concerns and priorities. And these concerns and priorities that show their, what things they're paying attention to, what their fears are going to present and manifest themselves in what? A dua to Allah. Du'as in the Quran capture the essence of what a person yearns for. So du'as in the Quran, Allah shows them to us, gives them to us in the language we should say to teach us what to think about and prioritize. Because we don't know what's important. We need Allah to teach us what is important. So within the surah, you're going to find a dua that every single person here needs to memorize. We've gone over it before. Here comes another reminder from Allah Azza wa Jalla to memorize and reflect on this dua. Inshallah, we'll talk about it. So let us begin, inshallah, the surah and comment on some of the passages and verses. Hamim, the two letters, as I said, the seventh surah that begins with Hamim. Once again, the surahs of Hamims talk about fundamentally what thing that they talk about? Revelation, right? Allah's bringing us back to the vehicle, the vessel that delivers this truth to us. The system that we need to understand. How else would we understand what haqq is? It is very subjective, extremely subjective. And a human being becomes arrogant when he or she thinks that they can define the truth. We have inclinations to it, sure. Allah equipped us with internal detectors for the truth, but we still need a light that shows us what it is to describe the right straight path. Allah reminds us, don't be arrogant, humble yourselves and look at the heavens, because the heavens provide you rain, nourishment. We cannot nourish ourselves. So just as the sky provides the rain to nourish the body, the source of that light to show us the path comes from the same place, which is up above. The heavens are the source from which revelation comes. Tanzeel, revelation, then Allah tells us, min Allahi al-Aziz al-Hakim. We've seen the reference to al-Aziz al-Hakim before in the previous surah. Allah reminds us, this book came from the one, Allah, your source, who is described specifically here with what? Al-Aziz al-Hakim. What is Aziz? Aziz is translated as mighty, but Izzah in Arabic describes that which is rare and unique. Right? No one like him. Aziz, no one like unrivaled. Hakim is what? Hakim is wise, but it also has the notion of muhkam. Muhkam is solid, exact, solid, like well put together, something that is very precise as well. Ahkam al-shay. He thoroughly completed it or thoroughly finished it, right? So when Allah describes himself with these qualities, who is he also describing? The revelation itself. It takes on the attributes of Allah. So Allah is saying this book has what? Izzah and hikmah. It is actually mighty, it's a mighty word of Allah, but it's also unique and unparalleled. Nothing like it. That's Aziz. This book is Aziz, but this book is also Hakim. Wise. Where else would we learn sound judgment? What choices to make that are good for us? What choices that will harm us and hurt creation? It's Allah who introduces this system that is all wisdom, but it's also a system or verses or laws that are very what? Precise. They're very deterministic. They make things very clear. Muhkam, right? They don't have ambiguity in them. They're very clear. Make sense? So the attributes of Allah become the attributes of also the Quran, His word. It's really a summons to respect and be in awe of what we're hearing, because it is haqq of Allah Azza wa Jalla. Then Allah Azza wa Jalla speaks of something, invites us to think about. Remember, two things that I've shared with you that Allah highlighted in the surah as being characteristic of every created thing. Just purpose, mission, just. It's defined for it precisely, muhkam, right? Fits it like a glove, decided by Allah Azza wa Jalla. Every single thing, and it has an appointed term. So Allah describes a creation that we might not have thought of as having purpose and a mission to it and an appointed term, which is the heavens and the earth. ما خلقنا السماوات والأرض وما بينهما إلا بالحق وأجل مسمى والذين كفروا عما أنذروا معرضون. He says, we've not created the heavens above you, nor the earth and what is in between them. It means everything. Beginning with the big things that we observe, right? Except with truth. Except with, first of all, they're deliberately created. They're not randomly created. They're not accidents, right? They have purpose. But they have a just purpose in every single one of them. Not saying, what is the purpose of that heaven, right? That sky. Yeah, there are clouds in it, etc. Might learn a few scientific fact. Far greater than that. It is actually a spiritual mission. It has a mission having to do with human beings, and Allah says, Ajal Musamma. Did we know that the sky one day will end? Allah speaks of it. إِذَا السَّمَاءُ انشَقَّتْ. There's a day in which this heaven above you will crack, and it will speak. And earth is إِذَا زُلْزِلَتِ الْأَرْضُ زِلْزَالَهَا وَأَخْرَجَتِ الْأَرْضُ أَثْقَالَهَا وَقَالَ الْإِنسَانُ مَا لَهَا يَوْمَئِذٍ تُحَدِّثُ أَخْبَارَهَا. This earth will crack and open up like a belly, and it will start to speak. And at the end of its life will come, it has an appointed term, an age. The sky above has an age, the tree has an age, the insect has an age, the cosmos have an age, everything. But Allah says these created things that have no choice have to fulfill their missions before their life is over. And they'll come back humbly to Allah Azza wa Jalla, right? So Allah is really, asking us to pay attention to our purpose. Have we fulfilled it? Before it's fully because we have choice. Unlike the sky above and the earth that have no choice, they have to fulfill their mission, right? Have we used our mission or fulfilled our mission, including the faculties within us? Allah has given us a mind and a brain. Has it fulfilled this mission, purpose? Allah has given us a hand, a heart that feels emotions. Have they fulfilled their mission or have they been misused? When the term is over, right, the consequences of that will be shown. That's what Allah Azza wa Jalla is saying this. But then Allah Azza wa Jalla says, there are those who are not answering this call. And they're not aware and they're unmindful. قُلْ أَرَأَيْتُمْ مَا تَدْعُونَ مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ أَرُونِي مَاذَا خَلَقُوا مِنَ الْأَرْضِ. Allah Azza wa Jalla now, first of all, this is the surah itself is a warning to Quraysh. Quraysh is heedless. They're rebelling against Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They're challenging everything that he says, challenging Al-Haqq. They don't want to comply. So Allah Azza wa Jalla wants to humble them and remind them, you're nothing but a little thing. Their nations far more powerful that preceded you. They didn't believe. What are you doing? Are you waiting for that time to be over? At which point you'll be completely taken out and undone? So Allah Azza wa Jalla says, tell me, have you seen that the thing you are asking, مَا so the thing you're calling for, everything in life is da'wah, right? Da'wah is a call, invitation. So we're being invited to things all the time, and we're inviting others to things all the time. So Allah says the things you're inviting others to, which is what you have been worshiping, are they themselves, have they ever created a thing? Means you remember the times of Mecca, idols, they were literally worshiping stone things that they've made. Can you imagine? Stone idols. They put them together and they started to worship them. Allah's rational argument is very simple. How do I know that that thing I've answered? They answered the call of that idol, and they're calling others to answer the call of that idol. Allah says, I'm going to ask you one simple question to decide whether this thing is worth being listened to or complied with. Very simple question. Ironic thing is that most people don't ask that question. And Allah Azza wa Jalla gives us a gift in this surah. If you're confused about what you're following in this life, ask yourself one question. Even if you're actually dishonoring yourself as a human being, to a way of life, ask yourself one simple question about it. Has it created anything? Why is that question important? Because if you notice, if it hasn't made anything, including itself, what power does it have? What say does it have? Nothing. It's a created, Allah's reminding us, it's a created thing. If it's created, it's a created thing, it has no will over itself. No choice even to bring itself into existence. How can it be a God? And how many people are not thinking of this fundamental question? Not only just about stones made of, idols made of stone. That's simple. But even those foolish people in Mecca worshipped. They never bothered to ask, the thing that I just made, that I'm prostrating to, has it ever made a thing? Let alone the fact that it doesn't have a voice or ears or intellect. But they're not even asking a simple question, which shows what? The rational faculty in the brains that Allah has given them that have a just purpose and functionality to them, have they been used? They're not being used. That's an example of how we can render the gifts of Allah useless. SubhanAllah. The most evident things become confusing, become overwhelming, become unclear. So Allah's asking a very simple, rational question that all of us should always ask about anything we follow. Has it any power? Does it create? Then why am I so concerned over it? It doesn't. Allah is the only one that creates. So He's the only one that deserves it, that deserves that attention and concern and worship. Then He says, but tell me more. Are there partners in the heavens? Have they shown you a contract, divine contract that says, I, along with God, own 10% of heaven number one? Do they? No. So they have no say in it. They haven't created anything. They have no partnership in anything. How can you be answering them? Okay, I'll ask you another question, he says. Do you have a scripture from before that says that these are the partners of God? So you can have nothing to go off of but yet you're still worshiping them. So what does that say about the person? Verse 5 tells us, وَمَنْ أَضَلُّ مِمَّنْ يَدْعُو مِنْ دُونِ اللَّهِ مَنْ لَا يَسْتَجِيبُ لَهُ إِلَى يَوْمِ الْقِيَامَةِ. He says, in a nutshell, here's your state. You're blind. And Allah says there is no one more misguided, means more blind, more foolish, than a person who answers the call of something and doesn't even speak or answer it until the day of judgment. And he specifically says that doesn't answer you until the day of judgment. Can the stone answer you? It cannot answer you. They're worshiping it. But Allah says until the day of judgment, because something else is going to happen on the day of judgment. This very stone that doesn't understand, doesn't hear, doesn't see you, right? And they're still worshiping it because they're so perverted, they're so misguided, as Allah says, there's no one more foolish than them, even dishonoring the very gift that Allah has given them in their brains. On that day of judgment, what's going to happen to that stone? It's actually going to start speaking. That's what's amazing. So Allah specifically says, well, it doesn't answer you right now, but it's going to answer you then. And it's going to say, I'm free of you. You're a fool. I didn't call you to the worship of the one that I'm worshiping. But we're not going to be able to see that now. Make sense? So Allah's language is very specific. Allah says they are unmindful and not even capable of cognition. Allah says something even more profound. The very things that have no mind to them, no awareness of what you're saying to them, every single thing that we worship other than Allah. He says, وَإِذَا حُشِرَ النَّاسُ كَانُوا لَهُمْ أَعْدَاءَ. They're not just a neutral object. You're not going to recognize or see in the day of judgment, oh, it's just a stone, I messed up, right? But it doesn't speak. No, it's going to speak, and you're going to turn into enemies against you. Worse. And every single thing besides Allah. Allah actually says, even your friend that you hung out with, that really distracted you from Allah, that pretends to like you, they post on Facebook, like, right? They hate your guts, right? They don't show it. They're envious of you. They're jealous of you. When do you see it? On the day of judgment. He says they'll turn into enemies against each other. See these forces of evil you witness on this earth? They pretend to have alliances, blah, blah, blah. You know what will happen on the day of judgment? They'll all turn on each other. They already hate each other, right? It just doesn't show. They just have common interests, common goals. That's it, to fight the truth. But one day Allah says, they'll all turn into enemies against each other, including the idols made of stone. Even the concepts that they worship, like let's say somebody worships a philosophy, an ideology, right? Worship becomes their life. That thing will manifest itself as an object that will be an enemy for that person. And it will condemn that person. And it will curse that person. Can you imagine? What enmity and hatred that will show up on that day of judgment it cannot be described in words. Allah will bring it out on that day. So last message is, are you really waiting for that to show up? So hurry up and answer the call before the term is up, right? Because you're going to see it for sure. And then Allah keeps talking about the fabrications. How they, to get away with what they're doing, right? They just come up with fabrications against the truth. So Allah teaches the Prophet ﷺ to respond with this. Verse 8. قُلْ إِنِ افْتَرَيْتُمْ فَلَا تَمْلِكُونَ لِي مِنَ اللَّهِ شَيْئًا وَأَعْلَمُ بِمَا تُفِيضُونَ فِيهِ كَفَى بِهِ شَهِيدًا بَيْنِي وَبَيْنَكُمْ. Beautiful statement. We're going to be challenged. Rasulullah was challenged. They called him a fabricator. They called him a liar. They called him a crazy person, blah, 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 magician. Name it, they've done it. And Allah is asking all of us, aren't you facing such challenges where your faith is being rebuked and mocked and demonized, where you're being demonized? Maybe your family's doing that too. Maybe your co-workers are mocked. Maybe you're being bullied in school. Isn't it true? Aren't we always being subjected to harm from others? We know it's not truthful. How often has people created rumors against us? Maybe on a mini scale or on a macro scale because that person is known. Come up with stories against the fabrications. Here's what Allah tells the Rasulullah to think about, because it's very, it's not just stressful. It is tormenting to the heart and to the soul to see justice being broken, especially against oneself. Isn't it true? Right? people can get into a state of despair when they're not able to correct the story out there and to defend themselves, and they have no resources. So Allah tells us, says, tell them, if I really fabricated this Quran as you claim, because that's their story, you fabricated this, you're a liar, etc. Tell them, first of all, listen, am I such a fool that I'm going to fabricate against the one who made the heavens and the earth? Because if I fabricated it, none of you can really defend me. Very simple argument. Like, okay, am I such a crazy person like you that I'm going to fabricate not against the person? I'm going to fabricate against who? The creator of the heavens and the earth. Wow. Could you have just chosen a better entity to challenge? He's like, am I such a fool to do this? Because you yourselves have no power to defend me or to protect me from the one that I'm going to fabricate against. And he says something beautiful. Talk about Allah. He says to him, tell them, Allah, the one that I serve, is aware of everything you say. And the excesses you engage in. Can you imagine if we live our lives like that? It's hard. And when people are really harming, attacking us, Allah is aware of it. It just gives peace to the heart. And to say this, كَفَى بِهِ شَهِيدًا بَيْنِي وَبَيْنَكُمْ. Allah is sufficient as a what? Witness. He witnesses everything. You know, in the act of in the act of trying to exact revenge, restore truth. How often do we lose our emotions, become angry, bitter, even transgress on truth, right? Because we're trying to defend ourselves. Allah says, you gotta begin with this beginning. Remind yourself and remind them that Allah is a witness between the two, and He will judge between the two of you. Remember when we speak of the splintering and the sectarian divides that are created? Everybody's saying, I'm the one, right? You're going to hellfire. I'm the one who's on the truth, you're in falsehood, blah, blah, blah. People start becoming nasty with each other. You know what Allah says? The truthful, faithful, humble soul will say what? What will they say? Allah will judge between us. And if I've done anything wrong, may Allah forgive me. May Allah forgive me if I've committed mistakes and shortcomings. But Allah will judge. That thought in itself gives peace to everyone. But how often do people do this in conflicts? Rarely. To say Allah will judge, Allah is a witness, right? He'll take care of me. He'll take care of this. I'm going to do my best, but I'm not going to, kill myself over this, right? Because Allah is with me. And that was his counsel to Rasulullah Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Then he tells them further to tell them this, again inviting them to think. In verse 9, قُلْ مَا كُنْتُ بِدْعًا مِنَ الرُّسُلِ وَمَا أَدْرِي مَا يُفْعَلُ بِي وَلَا بِكُمْ. He says to Rasulullah, tell them something else. Tell them, I am not something new. Bid'ah, you know bid'ah? What's bid'ah? Innovation, something new. So he says, I as a human being, I'm not a bid'ah. Before me were who? Prophets, revelations. And they all called it the same thing. Universal truths, eternal truths have always been known to men, brothers and sisters. This is not a new phenomenon. Even us, like when we're being challenged, Quran, what is it called for? Sharia, Allah. Sharia hasn't been given by Allah throughout time. Messengers have been sent since the dawn of creation. Allah doesn't change His laws for anyone. This is the methodology of the heavens. To send Allah's decision to send revelation for guidance and to send messengers. And they all call it the same thing. So when Rasulullah showed up, he's like, are you guys fools? What's wrong with you? Right? Am I something new? You're aware that there were prophets, Musa, Isa, Ayub, Yaqub. You know them. You heard of them. You heard of revelations. Am I calling to something different? Am I calling to myself? He's not calling to himself. Calling to Allah. Same consistent pattern. So he's not a bid'ah. And again, he's asking him to what? Just think with the faculty that Allah has given you, that has a function to it. Use it for your own benefit because He cares for them. Right? He cares for them. And He says to them in verse 10, Okay, he's now using another argument. He's like, okay, what if you don't believe in this? Can you think of the possible consequences? I mean, let's say, we want to know what's truthful and what's not truthful. The consequences of you, if this really happens to be from who? Allah, are not a joke. Because there are things you can afford to kind of let go, right? Like, you weigh the consequences and say, what's going to happen if I don't show up to that meeting? It happened to me recently. I'm like, nothing much is going to happen. I'm like, just another person in the meeting. So I did not to show up. I weigh the consequences, right? Imagine the fools, Allah, Rasulullah is telling them, let's just take this possibility, that this book came from Allah. Can you really afford it? Oops. Like, oh shoot, it's from Allah, right? And you discover that when you return back to Him where it's too late, you are really, what? Done. There is no way of recovering. It's not like the meeting that I skipped a week ago, right? Or the little thing you passed, or the thing you didn't buy and you missed the sale. No, this is missing the ultimate truth, the worship of Allah Azza wa Jalla. He's begging them to think for themselves. At least believe in it. Believe in it. No, first of all, no harm is going to come to you if you do, right? But ultimately, you deceive yourselves. And He tells them this. Allah Azza wa Jalla tells us, وَشَهِدَ شَهْدٌ مِّن بَنِي إِسْرَائِيلَ. The evidences are in front of you. He says, a witness from Banu Israel testified to the truth of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam because he is aware of the scriptures. Scholars differed in their interpretation over this. Some of them said this is a reference to Abdullah ibn Salam, like one of the companions of Rasulullah Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who was like a rabbi, like a scholar, but a scholar, Jewish scholar. His name is Abdullah ibn Salam. He was intimately familiar with the Jewish scripture. And within it is what? Prophecies of who? A prophet that will be like Musa, coming from the Arabs, right? Coming from Arabia. It's very distinct and clear description of him. Now remember in the last surah, what happened to Banu Israel? When Rasulullah showed up in Medina, they said, nope, because you're not one of us. You're very arrogant. And they rejected that. Remember, like the lack of faith, the absence of faith makes people very racist, by the way. Because they start thinking they're better than others. So they just rejected Rasulullah because of the fact that he is not from Banu Israel. Right? Despite all the evidences, but yet some of them did. Like Abdullah ibn Salam, he said, I heard about this man, and he matched up with the description in the Torah. So I went to see him. And he said, by Allah, when I saw his face, I said, Hada Rasulullah. This is the Prophet. Just from seeing his face, from the light that emanated from his face. He said, can I be but Rasulullah? And he believed. And Christians believed, and Jewish people believed. He said, you've seen people who looked at the evidences and it matched up with the prior scriptures, right? And they believed in him, and you're still rejecting this. Very simple, beautiful arguments given to them. And to further describe their arrogance, Allah says, وَقَالَ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا كَانَ خَيْرًا مَا سَبَقُونَ إِلَيْهِ. But this believer said this, if this thing you call truth wasn't any good, the poor people in society would not have gotten it before us. What does that say? They're extremely what? Arrogant and racist, and they're like, good things in society belong to who? So let's say, I don't know, the government made a nice neighborhood, around in Montgomery County. Like wealthier people rush to it, right? They have more privileges, access to schools, etc., etc. Let's say all the poor people were given access. They're like, wait, that's no good. I don't want it. Or you'll stop fighting them over it to get them out. That's the attitude of what? Privileged people throughout time. Whenever poor people get something, they either want to snatch it away from them or they reject it completely, saying, I don't want anything to do with it, because if it was good, I would have earned it. I'm entitled to that thing before them. Nothing good is left for the poor. So they're claiming that if this is any good, these poor people, we don't want them around us. Just because they're following it, we don't want it. Can you imagine the arrogance, the blind state of their minds and their hearts? So Allah just says, well, before it, there was the scripture of Musa, Imam wa Rahmah, revelation from Allah Azza wa Jalla that led people to the truth, and that was a vehicle of the mercy of Allah Azza wa Jalla. So this is nothing but a confirmation of what came before it. Then Allah now in verse 15, actually what I'll do is, I'll mention the two stories and then I'll wrap up with a dua. In verse 21, He's asking them to remember the nations before them that had that might and strength and wealth that was far greater than their wealth and status. To remind them, hurry up and answer the call. He says, وَاذْكُرْ أَخَا عَادٍ إِذْ أَنذَرَ قَوْمَهُ بِالْأَحْقَافِ. He says, remind them of the people of Ad who lived in the south of Arabia in an area that was full of these sand dunes. Remember, everything has a purpose. The sand dunes, you look like they're like a mound of sand just sitting there. It has a purpose. Far greater than our comprehension. What was special about the people of Ad? They had what? Lots of light. Very sophisticated. And Allah describes them as having received lots of gifts from Allah Azza wa Jal. They were very sophisticated people culturally. They had intelligence, cognition, culture, arts, name it, they had it. So Allah gave them gifts that have purpose. They misused them. And they rejected it. They thought, who can really finish us off? And their prophet, who? Who was their prophet? Hud, right? Came to them and they're like, who are you? You're nothing but a little tiny creature. And poor people are following you. The same story. Same pattern of rebellion. And because of their might and their strength and the special gift, the intelligence that Allah has given them, the sophistication, right? You saw their own productions, the buildings, the strong fortresses. They're like, who can really challenge any of this, right? So Allah Azza wa Jal says here, suddenly a test came to them. They had a drought, right? And it was mentioned that it was a 3-year drought. So they're like, what's happening? And they were suffering because of that drought. It was a test and a reminder from Allah Azza wa Jal. So it is recorded that they start praying for the rain, even though they don't believe in God. They still prayed. Prayed for the rain to come. So after a period of time, it is said up to 3 years, suddenly they saw a cloud coming to their valley. So what did they think to themselves? Have you ever thought they were really on falsehood? Never. Remember, arrogant, privileged people never think they're wrong. They think they're right. Everybody else is messed up. It's only a matter of time, right? For them. So they're saying, oh, look at that cloud coming. They're very happy. Thinking what? There was a cloud coming to them to deliver what? Rain. But what they didn't know, remember we've seen this in other surahs of the Hamims, where something appears to be carrying one meaning, but it has another meaning. It has another reality to it, right? What they didn't know is that that was a cloud carrying what? Their pain, their torment, and their death and destruction. But not in a normal way. And it was coming, it was forming, just as the sand dunes formed around them. And what they didn't know is that this sand dune has a purpose, and an appointed term is going to cooperate with who? It's going to cooperate with that wind coming, and the clouds, and do what to them? Finish them off. The sand dunes that they were proud of, that were around them, that they enjoyed the beauty of, that is a soldier of Allah Azza wa Jal, waiting to fulfill what? Its mission. So when this wind came, it was a howling, raging wind, brothers and sisters. Tossed up these sand dunes, right? And left nothing, as we know, left nothing in its wake. Destroyed that community completely. But then Allah left a few things, standing. What was it? Some of their structures. Why? As an example. Allah says, I'm going to finish up, but I'm going to leave few remnants, few little things left for Quraysh and all of us to see it until the end of time. To understand what will happen at the end, it might not look like it was a long period of time for them, but it wasn't. And when the appointed term came, Allah Azza wa Jal destroyed them completely because they didn't fulfill the purpose that Allah Azza wa Jal, created them for. In Surah Al-Ahqaf, we also understand another detail. Allah says, He sent upon them a raging, howling wind that also left them, imagine, it got into their inside, like, this is like, it's taken almost like their organs out from its power. That it left them like hollowed out, emptied, what? Palm trees. You can imagine a palm tree that's destroyed completely with its guts out. That's how they looked. because of their rebellion against the truth of Allah. So the consequences will catch up, and it's the law of Allah, and it doesn't change. But Allah also says, we sent it upon them for 7 nights and 8 days. Can you imagine? Non-stop. A hurricane like no other. And the sand dunes turned on them, subhanAllah. And these sand dunes still stand as a witness. And the sand dunes will also do what on the Day of Judgment? Witness to what happens. SubhanAllah. Just as the heavens will witness, just as earth will witness when they meet their appointed term. And Allah says in Surah in verse 26, وَلَقَدْ مَكَّنَّاكُمْ فِيمَا إِن مَكَّنَّاكُمْ فِيهِ مَكَّنَّاهُمْ فِيمَا إِن مَكَّنَّاكُمْ فِيهِ. He says to Quraysh, we've given them things we didn't even give you. We've given them far greater powers, far greater wealth, far greater intelligence, and they couldn't withstand what? The judgment of Allah. You think you can? Make sense? Humble yourself, so to speak. Then Allah gives us in verse 29. So that was an example, historic event that should remind nations and individuals. But in case we didn't, Allah gives us another example of a creation of Allah that you might not think of much, or you might associate with evil things or falsehoods. How they, when they heard the call of Allah, it wasn't even a question. They answered right away because it is fitrah. It makes the most sense. It is haqq. I mean, the heart calls you to it. So when they heard the revelation, they were humbled right away. Who were they? The jinn. So Allah tells the Prophet and reminds him and reminds all of us. وَإِصْرَفْنَا إِلَيْكَ نَفَرًا مِنَ الْجِنِّ يَسْتَمِعُونَ الْقُرْآنَ فَلَمَّا حَضَرُوهُ قَالُوا أَنصِتُوا فَلَمَّا قُضِيَ وَلَّوْا إِلَىٰ قَوْمِهِمْ مُنذِرِينَ. Allah teaches us through the example of jinn. To be like them, in this case, this group of jinn. So jinn, like human beings, have volition, have will, have choice. Some of them are Muslim, some of them are not Muslim. One thing about the jinn is that they're not as intelligent as human beings. Our intellects are far more complex and advanced than the intellect of jinn. But they move faster, they're swift, etc., etc., etc. And they also can go to the hellfire or Jannah. Very simple. They're communities, nations like us. Rasul went to Tarif. He was rejected in by Quraysh and the idolaters of Mecca. In Mecca, he sought the refuge of other places. He wanted a community to embrace him so that he can propagate the call. So he went to Tarif. And what happened with Tarif? We know the story. Did they accept him, embrace him? No. They insulted him. They threw him out of the city. And they sent gangs of people after him to hurt him. So imagine his fate. He runs out of the city to save his own life while bleeding from his feet and breaks down under a tree. Something beautiful there. Human beings that have intellects, that have hearts and souls rejected him in Mecca and Tarif. What hope does he have? He went back, subhanAllah, Rasulullah, so broken, back to Mecca. And they were waiting to kill him. That was the longest journey of Rasulullah from Tarif to Mecca. Because he was terrified of going back in, and they were planning to kill him. So imagine his state. He was in such grief that couldn't be described in words. So profound. And a lot of details happened in that journey, but before he got into Mecca, Rasulullah spent some time praying. He was praying his prayers, but also at night he would get up and pray. So there was a valley outside on the journey back from Taif called the Valley of the Palm Trees. He stayed in it and he prayed throughout the night. He thought, my mission is what? Failure. Nobody listened. Not even a soul has answered. A single human being has answered. So he was in his prayer, reciting, finished his salah, went back to Mecca. And by the way, someone from Mecca, from the idolaters, from the leaders, he was the guarantor. Rasulullah reached out to him and said, please take me in. They're going to harm me. He said, you're under my protection. So he was able to get back in safely. He thought this whole mission produced 0 Muslims. Right? Allah later reveals this surah and also Surah Al-Jinn to tell him you had no idea what happened in that journey. When you were in Wadi Nakhla, reciting and you had no creature around you, what you didn't know is this. What happened? Allah steered a group of jinn, 7 to 9. They were walking, Rasulullah cannot see them, and suddenly they heard the recitation of the Quran. They stopped. They were not Muslim. They stopped, paused, and listened attentively. And Allah describes them. يستمعون القرآن. They were listening throughout the salah. And what happened to them when they listened? They opened their heart to it. As soon as he was done with the salah, they raced back. Saying what? Raced back to their community, to their city, to their town, saying, hurry up and answer Allah. We heard the truth. SubhanAllah. Allah saying the jinn raced. The jinn raced. And now, not only to believe themselves, they said, La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah, but something else they've done. What did they do? They raced back to call others to Allah. That's our mission. Summed up in verse 29. Are we racing to embrace it? But what do we do with it? Others are in desperate need of this. The truth, haqq principles, Allah, Quran, to help them out, to save them in this journey of life and in the next world. Allah said, the jinn have done it. Quraysh, why are you not doing it? But it was also a beautiful reminder to Rasulullah Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. When we invite others, are they just going to say, hey, give me a hug? No. Even our children, they just give you a hug and say, yeah, Mama, I'm just going to go to salah for you. It maybe happens here and there, but oftentimes it's not the case. Right? It's hard. Allah's saying, don't worry. Rasul went to Tarif, Quraysh, Mecca, no one listened. On his journey back, he was reciting Quran between him and Allah. Allah did what? Guided hearts and souls of things he didn't even see. It was sincere presence. Meaning that you and I might be making the best effort with people we know, and no one is cooperating and listening. But Allah says, did you fail? No, you didn't. First of all, you're planting seeds. Don't worry, Allah rewards you. But something extraordinary is happening in other realms you don't know about. For instance, right now, maybe jinn are listening. But it's not just jinn, the ants, the trees. Maybe creation, human beings we haven't seen, but somehow the message will reach them. Allah knows. The good that we do on this earth, anything that is good, that is acceptable to Allah Azza wa Jalla, will touch the creation. Even if you think it didn't. Even the one who's telling you no, you never know. Right? When they'll be guided. How they've been touched by it. So Allah's saying, just keep doing what you're doing. So Rasulullah, can you imagine his reaction, sallallahu alaihi wasallam? When he heard, he's like, God, on the way back from Tarif, I thought I didn't have a single soul listen. Right? Well, there was one person who believed in him, by the way, to this. We'll share the detail later. That was not from Tarif. But he didn't know that the jinn listened and were guided to the truth because of what? His what? Just recitation of the Quran. SubhanAllah. So I'll conclude with a couple of thoughts, inshallah. First, verse 15. So Allah describing big things here in the surah. Suddenly He brings it back to a parallel within our lives. And He says this, وَوَصَّيْنَا الْإِنسَانَ, verse 15. Record it, mark it, right? Memorize it, inshallah. وَوَصَّيْنَا الْإِنسَانَ بِوَالِدَيْهِ إِحْسَانًا حَمَلَتْهُ أُمُّهُ كُرْهًا وَوَضَعَتْهُ كُرْهًا وَحَمْلُهُ وَفِصَالُهُ 30 شهرا حتى إذا بلغ أشده وبلغ 40 سنة قال ربي أوزعني أن أشكر نعمتك التي أنعمت علي وعلى والدي وأن أعمل صالحا ترضاه وأصلح لي في ذريتي إني تبت إليك وإني من المسلمين. One of the most extraordinary verses happens to be Surah Al-Ahqaf. Beautiful lesson for you and me. Pay attention to and dua to memorize. Allah says concerning urgency of time. He says we've enjoined the human being, reminded the human being to be dutiful to who? His parents. Remember, nations rebelling against Rasulullah. He says, let me bring it back to you. What's your mission and purpose? Serve Allah first. Second to him is who? Your parents. Be good to them. Ihsan. What is ihsan? We translate it as virtue, righteousness. Ihsan is making something beautiful. Make everything beautiful with them. Your conduct, your words, your presence, your spirit, your humility, at the best with your parents. If you do so, that's truth. That's haqq. Right? So don't ask about Ad and Thamud. Think to yourself, what are you doing within your household? Let's say, are you beautiful? Right? Especially with your parents, because that will show you who you are. Then he says, I remind you of your mother. She carried you with pain, delivered you with pain. It doesn't mean not being good to the father. But the mother has a precedence because of the labor she was in. Then he says this, until this human being reaches the age of what? 40. He will say a dua. So first of all, why is he saying 40? Not 30, not 50. He said that's like the prime of your life. Almost like the midway point for an average lifestyle, isn't it? He said by that time, could have probably already had a job, maybe married, children, right? Achieved many material goals. Unless saying this age is the age at which you're supposed to have reached your spiritual and intellectual maturity. And by the way, prophets many of them received the message what? At what age? 40. Rasulullah received it at the age of 40. He says, when you reach 40, you really should have understood. Should have really understood the priorities of life. And what are the priorities of life? Because you've already accomplished your goals, you've seen your children grow. Now you should be really wiser. And if you're truly wise at the age of 40, your wisdom and understanding will show up in this dua. And Allah gives us the dua which highlights what? The ultimate one. Concerns, priorities that a human being should have from day one, but that maybe the journey of life hasn't really made its impact on him yet or hasn't learned. He said, by 40, you better what? Know this. Because this one is about what? Urgency and time before. It is really too late. So he says, hey, listen, if you haven't really done that yet, hurry up. 40 is your alarm. And if you're 50, hurry up and do this. And what is the dua of this humble, faithful servant of Allah? Here it is. First of all, they'll say this. ربي أوزعني أن أشكر نعمتك التي علي وعلى والدي. أنعمت علي وعلى والدي. First thing, they'll be recognizing this. They'll say this. Ya Allah, grant me the ability to be thankful to you. For the gift you've given me, this life, my family, my wealth, my faith, my heart, everything. Ya Allah, I don't have the ability to be thankful. I know it's you. You're the source. You're everything. Ya Allah, I want to spend the rest of my life being what? Thankful to you. And remember, thanks and gratitude to Allah means action. Not just, Ya Allah, thank you. No. Use the gifts that you're thanking Allah for what? To please Allah. So Ya Allah, give me the ability to be thankful to you for the gifts you've given me and given who? My parents. He or she are mindful of their parents. And they're making dua to their parents, for their parents. Look at their responsibility. They're thinking of their parents, thinking of themselves and saying, Ya Allah, make me and my family and parents thankful to you. Make me do it for you. Dua number 2, or second part, is what? How will I spend the rest of my life? I want to be thankful to Allah, mindful of my parents, making dua for them, but what else? Action. Translate the gratitude. When أعمل صالحا, Ya Allah, Ya Allah. For the rest of my life, Ya Allah, make me do deeds that please you. Not me, my whims and desires, other. Please you. So look at the mission. I want to be thankful, grateful in my heart, mindful of my parents, making dua for them. Ya Allah, the rest of my life, I want to do it, spend it for your sake, for things that please you. And I don't have the ability, make me do it. And number 3, who do I leave behind? Children. So he's still mindful of his children. Ya Allah, I've tried my best and they're still like, right? They're not there. Ya Allah, fix them up for me. Aslih li, I cannot fix my children. Maybe they'll good now, maybe they'll be misguided. Ya Allah, you're the one who can guide my children. But Durri is not just your direct children. Who are they? All the descendants until the end of time. Ya Allah. So he or she are carrying this responsibility, awareness of the responsibility towards their parents, towards their own lives, towards their actions, towards their children and generations to come. And then Allah says, after they make this dua, they say this, Inni tubtu ilayk. Ya Allah, I return back to you. I am from the Muslims. Then Allah in verse 16 says, here's what I'll do for these people. أولئك الذين نتقبل عنهم أحسن ما عملوا. For these people who do this, they really make these du'as, these are their concerns, we're going to accept from them their best deeds. Means what? Let's say I've done 100 deeds today. Some of them are great, some of them are really terrible. Some of them are poor. Not best ever. Allah says, I will not even look at the mediocre ones. Don't worry. I'm going to look at the most excellent 5 deeds you've done. I'm going to judge you based on those only. As if the 100 are like the 5. Can you imagine? You solve problems on a test. You ace it on a couple of them. 8 questions, like, you're like 50%. The teacher will say, don't worry about those. I'm going to take the two problems you've solved completely perfectly. I'm going to give you 100% on the whole exam. Because they're generous. Allah says, I'll judge him like that. So don't worry about the mediocre deeds, don't worry about the ill deeds, I'll overlook them completely. I'll take the best thing you've done in your journey of life and I'll judge you on it as if you've done it throughout your life. That's the word of Allah Azza wa Jal. And He says, these are the companions of Jannah. This is the promise of Allah. SubhanAllah. And inshallah we end with last verse 35 where Allah tells the Prophet Muhammad, so be patient, possibly. Like the ones before you, you're going to witness it. Don't worry, the term will end. You're going to see it. So be patient and constant. And don't be hasty. It's as if, I'm going to leave this with you. I'd love to hear your comments on it. He says, it's as if when they come back to Allah and they see the fulfillment of Allah's promise, they will see that it wasn't but an hour. It wasn't but an hour. Indeed, would anyone perish but the ones who were wicked? Right? But I love this notion of the hour. Allah says, you see, you think it's long, right? When you're in it, and you're waiting for it. You think it's delayed. When you go back to Allah, you're going to recognize it was late. Make sense? It not only was it not late, Allah's judgment, but it was actually very quick, it was an hour. So this whole journey is like an hour. That's the perception of time that we'll have now. And inshallah with that, I tend to open the floor.
There is in Surah Asra, ayah 24, I think, about the parents.
Yes.
And وَقَدَ رَبُّكَ أَلَّا تَعْبُدُوا إِلَّا إِيَّاهُ وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا إِمَّا يَبْلُغَنَّ عِندَكَ الْكِبَرَ أَحَدُهُمَا أَوْ كِلَاهُمَا فَلَا تَقُل لَّهُمَا أُفٍّ وَلَا تَنْهَرْهُمَا وَقُل لَّهُمَا قَوْلًا كَرِيمًا وَاخْفِضْ لَهُمَا جَنَاحَ الذُّلِّ مِنْ رَحْمَتِكَ وَقُل رَّبِّ ارْحَمْهُمَا كَمَا رَبَّيَانِي صَغِيرًا. And it is again, Allah Ta'ala says, وَقَدَ رَبُّكَ, I decree on you, لَا تَعْبُدُوا إِلَّا إِيَّاهُ, don't worship anything else other than Allah Ta'ala, because He is our Creator. And He made the parents the source of creation. So Allah Ta'ala, in the same ayah, He says, have reverence for me and have reverence for the parents because they are the source of creation. إِمَّا يَبْلُغَنَّ عِندَكَ الْكِبَرَ أَحَدُهُمَا أَوْ كِلَاهُمَا فَلَا تَقُل لَّهُمَا أُفٍّ وَلَا تَنْهَرْهُمَا. I think that's mentioned here. When one of them or both of them get old, don't even say oof. I think it is. And وَاخْفِضْ لَهُمَا جَنَاحَ الذُّلِّ. Whenever you confront your parents, bow your shoulders. The shoulders are the sign of pride. Your shoulders. وَاخْفِضْ لَهُمَا جَنَاحَ الذُّلِّ مِنْ رَحْمَتِكَ وَقُل رَّبِّ ارْحَمْهُمَا كَمَا رَبَّيَانِي صَغِيرًا. And bow your shoulders, because when you were little, you couldn't do anything. You couldn't put anything in your mouth, anything. They are the one who brought you up. So the parents, they are hukuk, they are mentioned along with the Creator because they are the source of creation. And I think it's often, we should be very mindful of respect to our parents.
So very much, Jazakallah khair for bringing us back to the set of verses instead of the Isra.
24.
Exactly, instead of the Isra. It's just beautiful. Reminders, like it's a core. It's like if you want to know if we're aligned or not aligned with Al-Haqq, right? Allah says, this is your gauge right here. This is your gauge. It's very hard. It's really hard to convey this and anchor it in the hearts of our children, especially in our day and age, right? Because this day and age is pulling them away from that. It's actually inviting them, calling them to challenge it. That you need to be true to yourself. Notice everything is about the self in this era, modern times. Everything is about the self and our selfish needs. That it trumps, it's above everything else. And no ability to even reflect on your source. As you said, Allah says, I made them your vessel. Your source, a means that Allah created. He is the source. If you're not honoring your source, ultimately Allah and the source He placed on this earth, you're no good. You're no good. Because you're disconnected. You're unaware of your source. So how can you, if you cannot honor that, how can you honor anything, right? So it's really a beautiful reminder, but it's a hard thing to also, like we're all like struggling with it in one way or another, with our children and just the larger kind of entity of the youth and young people to just convey these, because they have serious challenges that are pushing on them.
Yes. You say you don't make culture in Islam. Culturally for us, taking care of your parents, that's a must. You know, we come to America, I've seen people put their parents in nursing home, keep their parents out of the house. Our culture back home, it's a cycle. They take care of you when you're young, they get older, you take care of them. Like my mother stays with me right now, in my house. Got along fine with my wife. But people have, basically I've seen people divorced because they don't want the parents in the house. And for me, that bothers me a lot because it's a cycle. I mean, it's in the Quran. But we do that back home. That's part of the culture. So I guess, you know.
It really does come down to the culture and the norms of that culture. And for anybody struggling with mother-in-law and wife, please speak to them.
Oh, yeah.
Figure out how it makes it work.
Their mother, they went there.
Has a formula that works. Alhamdulillah, we have the resource here.
They were there before whoever came in your life. So basically, we got to.
Right there.
So for here, I think the people who are blessed with the parents, they have their parents at their attention now. The people who do not, if parents pass away, they can still do something for them. They can, pray for them. They can give a charity on their name. I think that's the, offspring they left it, a solid offspring they left it behind. In fact, they're doing. Actually, there are 2 points, but the lesson from this surah is that patience and steadfastness. So the thing is that Prophet was going through all kinds of a hardship. He was kind of disappointed from Quraysh, the Meccan people at that time. So he thought that he wanted to try something else. He went to tire of that. And that was a discouraged. I mean, he was injured, bodily injured and bleeding and all those kinds of stuff. So the thing was that, so you are going through all kind of difficulties, calamity and all that. But if you are on the right path, do not get into a distraction. Do not forgive. People get immediately distracted because when they see hardship in that. So the thing is that he stated, you don't know what you are conveying or doing may not be a short-term success and encouragement, but if you think about it in a long term, you will be having some impact on those things. So the Prophet did not know that the jinns are listening. He had no idea who was listening to his recitation at that time. It was revealed later on. So I just 2 messages, patience and steadfastness to get that.
I can't emphasize this enough. This is incredibly profound lesson, because all of us get frustrated by not being able to witness outcomes. He says, no. The outcomes will not just happen. They're already happening, you just don't see them. Because Allah has the knowledge of the unseen. We don't see it. Problem is we're judging everything by the appearances. This is impacting things in creation we can't see and comprehend. That's why I say, listen, if nobody's listening, talk to the cat. I don't know. You know what I'm saying? Don't worry. Things are being impacted in profound ways. And the story of jinn demonstrates this. Rasulullah himself did not know. He was actually discouraged. A soul listened to me? Pain, broken. And Allah says, no, you have no idea. Actually, many Muslims became Muslims because of that journey. A whole community of jinn became Muslim. So don't worry about these humans that rejected you. Make sense? But also, jazakallah khair for things on behalf of parents, etc. We know this very well. Even if there's no such a thing as too late. Du'as, charity, any good deeds in their name, inshallah. And in the name of anyone, inshallah. It's acceptable to Allah, etc.
So I'm going to understood. You said that I also and even I like this really evident example. He clearly she says about the wife of Zakan. He wait until Zakan wife would only give them a son. Yeah, yeah. Example, he can say how he was nice with his parents. That's to give us idea about the agenda, our agenda. The story of the Yada. How he was so kind to his parents. All the time when I visit my father about the parents, Yaya, how Yaya was so nice with his parents. It worked all the time. I use that as a and the other one who made me is the confirmation of the Jinn about for us, their revelation. And that was so nice to me because they even said, oh, Musa alayhi salam, you pay that on Musa, right? And they confirmed their revelation. That was nice.
Yeah. And it's interesting, last point, these jinn that showed up in the valley knew about the Torah. Like they were more knowledgeable than all the fools in Arabia, right? It's interesting. What is?
They were believers.
Believers in the Torah. Like, oh, this man is a confirmation of the message we heard. It's him. And they're just hearing verses in the Quran. You know, I just cannot imagine when Rasul heard this revelation telling you, hey, by the way, remember when you were back then? Jinn became Muslim. Can you imagine one day when Allah now brings us up and say, okay, you're frustrated there, right? Let me show you what happened. And you're like, wow, only if I believed, only if I just kept going, only if I was steadfast and just did the good deed regardless, not waiting for consequences or results or whatever, right? The simple gauges that we use. Listen, it's far more proud, just do it for Allah's sake. It already set fruits, produce trees far beyond your imagination. That's faith, to believe in that.
The part where you're saying that we build ourselves, our parents, the good deeds, and our children, and these are for believers, right? And kind of as we all go through this junior world, keep this pressure built up on you. Just life beating you up, from business to bills or whatever it is. We all got our own thing. And just when you hear that, it got me all like teary-eyed. It's like, it's a pressure cooker, Life's like a pressure cooker. And like, when you said that verse, it just got me teary-eyed. It's like, it just releases. And you just, if you have that iman and that taqwa inside you, and you have that knowing, you have that faith, all the stresses, just, when you said that, just, khalas, just washed it away, and it felt so good. Alhamdulillah.
Now, barakallah fik for sharing that, and that's the whole point of it, actually, the revelation. It uses everything when we surrender to Allah. Even the verse you notice that dua is all about surrendering to Allah. You have no control. Just say, Allah, I'm going to use my life to please you, even my children and their generations coming. How do I control that? Brothers and sisters, let me ask you. 200 years from now, the children of your children's children, whatever, the 3 generations down, do you have any idea what's going to happen to them? Well, I think a lot of it is, oh my God, what I'm doing right now determines what happens to these grandchildren. It's a lot of pressure. Even the thought is pressure. Surrender to Allah. Do Allah's saying, just do what you can. Ask me to help them and guide them. Allah's generous. Because it's hard. It is a pressure cook. Everything else in life and Allah's saying these are your priorities. And we better attain them at 40. And now for people under 40, say, oh, I have a lot of time. No. I would actually say to a lot of young people, start making this time now. Right? Can you imagine if you say that 15 and 20 and it's part of your regimen daily? What will happen at 40? Wow. It'll be like grand wisdom, right? SubhanAllah. It is summary of life and life's lessons, wisdom. The ultimate priorities are all in this dua, verse 15, Surah Al-Ahqaf. It's just incredible dua, beautiful. Truth, all truth of Allah is good.
It's interesting that after listening to all of that, I was reflecting that at one point you started talking about the dunes for art and the beautiful dunes. And then and immediately after that came the surah is saying that what about the children who are ungodly? And I found wonder that why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala left it at that, but then I think everything had a purpose, came back to it, and in Surah 15, he gives the answer. What do you need to do for those ungodly children? It's just a cycle.
That's actually very beautiful. You're right, it is all interconnected. Maybe not placed in the same passage, but Allah asks us to connect it all. You're absolutely right. For the ungodly, here it is. You're right. Just make the dua to Allah, do your best, plant the seeds, and they might end up being like the jinn one day, right? And they'll believe. Make the dua to Allah Azza wa Jalla. Jazakallah, a beautiful connection.
One of the things I'm thinking about here is character, compassion, and empathy. So when we read the stories of these prophets, all the prophets, they all have gone through the hard process. They're the most, but because of the prophethood, they have been reassured every now and then. Allah Himself is reassuring them. Angels are coming and telling them things. I think that's really important because when you're going through hardship, then you don't know, like for instance, coming back from there, he devastated all these things. But Allah is reassuring them, no, don't worry, this is what happened. That's the assurance that you are right to stand, you are right to making a forward. For us, that doesn't happen, right? So if we as a Muslim, as a human being, don't show compassion and empathy to each other, hardship, I think that's where we're missing a lot because we see our brothers and sisters everywhere in the world, all who are blessed within our community, going through hardship and difficulties. We just selfish. We just doing our prayer, our thing, doing hard and think, okay, I'm going to do. But because of that, the other person who's going through, which some people say 87% of the refugees in the world are non-Muslims. That can be even here. If you don't show sympathy, compassion to them and stand for them, then look at their journey. Every single hour, day, years, and month they go through. How difficult it is, and they don't have the assurance. They one big sleep, and they happy with more than, it's a difficult time. So that's something we.
No, absolutely. It's so easy to be wrapped up in one's own life and not bother, not pay attention. That's excellent, well put. And it comes down to rights and responsibilities and compassion. But even that, we can beat ourselves up. The problems are so enormous. You and I cannot really fix them. It's in the hands of Allah. But we have to here's the dua again. Ya Allah, make me do my best. And everything matters. Jazakallah khair for bringing that up so that we don't forget the bigger narrative and story of the struggle.
Yeah. Assalamu alaikum. The dua reminds me of dua Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salam, where he says, SubhanAllah is the same. And other point, while he came in the theory of da'wah to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he didn't see the consequences. But I think that applies to life in general. I mean, for our life, for example, there are incidents which happen in our life we didn't know where it would end up. I mean, I could reflect on my coming here to this country. I didn't know, or no one could plan for anything. And subhanAllah, you do what you can, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has purpose for you where to be. And so to me, that's a lesson.
Absolutely. Jazakallah, a beautiful point. We just don't know the purpose behind anything. Allah is just steering us on a journey. We have to just try to make the right choices. But we cannot even make the right choices. That's why the dua says, Ya Allah, make me make the right choices. Make me do the things that please. Make me use the gifts that you've given me to please you. Because we're all limited. We can't. But it's interesting, you said, then later you saw, right? Allah will reveal to us now and later, right? Partially now, some of the meanings. We begin to say, I see why Allah brought me here, what happened. All the things we're not patient. Allah will show us how we should have been patient, that it's perfect. The amazing thing is all perfect. It's hard to imagine now. One day we'll find out. Jazakallah khair. I like this.
I was reflecting on the last ayah which relates to that hour. That concept of time is something which is maybe because it's repeatedly mentioned in Quran at different places that it's a very short span of time that they're spending out there, short span of time. And when you will look back, when you realize that it was really too short. But Quran and Allah and all of that heavens, they are in a different dimension. We are in a dimension where time is one of the dimensions, and therefore we get stuck with that. And then we grow, and then we get old, and we see that time is the constant law. So it's sometimes very difficult to overcome that this dimension is just a dimension. But it's repeatedly said in Quran because in that dimension, in that space or whatever it is, this dimension does not exist. So hopefully when we go back there, then we will realize, but at the same point in time in our life as well, sometimes when I look back, and we were talking about the age, and so much time has passed, when I look back, it seems to pass very quickly as well. So there is a little relativity.
I was waiting for someone to bring up time, and he did. I'm going to have to come back to that. So this is very interesting, fascinating concept. They're studying that concept as we speak. Well, first of all, it's in physics, right? The whole idea of perception of time. We know that it's a dimension. Throughout the Quran, we've seen references to it that it's nothing but limited, short time. It's only in your perception that it's long. So here's what's interesting. Well, first of all, if you look at there's a whole concept of time dilation. We talked about it before, like according to Einstein's theory of relativity, that as objects travel faster, closer to the speed of light, what happens to time? Slows down, right? And clearly, if something ever gets to the speed of light, never, according to physics, nothing gets to the speed of light. Time will completely stop. But I feel like all these are evidences, as you said, that Allah's showing us, like, listen, there's a realm in which there's no time. Time is a creature of Allah, it's a dimension He put us in now to experience this life. That's it. And now there's another field of study in psychology about the perception of time. Not just the physics one, but that even perception of time. I want to ask all of majority of people here, I see some young people grew up in 30s, 40s, 50s. Is time moving faster or slower? Compared to where we grew up?
Well, it's getting less and less.
Exactly. How about you? So faster. Isn't it amazing? But isn't it the same seconds, minutes, and hours? It is. But we are perceiving it differently. Why is that? Nobody understands it, by the way. There are some theories around it. It even depends on the activity. I'll give you an example. Imagine sitting on your couch, chips the whole day watching 7 hours of television. Is the time perception of how it passed similar to you, stuff all like the ultimate hike, right? Is it the same?
No.
Which one moved faster?
The TV. Ultimately.
Right? It's all about what you're even doing. SubhanAllah, it's like, what's going on here? When you're engrossed in something, for example, it might feel slower, right? Or faster, actually. I mean, it also depends on your emotions. They've studied this. If you're stressed out, I'm going to give you an example. You're waiting for something, it's interesting. I got a bill yesterday about something it was a mistake. I'm like, Ya Allah, I have to now wait until Monday to fix this. Couldn't this bill arrive Thursday or Friday so that I can take care of it? Now I have to wait 2 days thinking about it, Monday morning. Now, when I'm waiting for it to show up Monday morning, it's not going to be slow or fast. Slow. When you're anxiously waiting for something and it's like, oh, I don't know what's going to happen, the test score, it feels like it's a year, not a day. So emotions are built into it. So let me bring it back to this. When people are observing corruption and evil, and you're saying, where is Allah's judgment? Haqq, right? Does it feel long or short? Long. When are they going to come to an end? Allah saying, because you're stressed out waiting for what? The end. If you just relax, Allah says, and be patient, and just hang out and just do what you're supposed to do, suddenly you're going to notice it's very fast. And then when it's over, you're going to look back and say, it was what? Quick. Even less. You're going to realize it was never late. So all the things we say they're late, they're not actually late. In fact, they're faster than what you think. To the point where it was just a part of a day, an hour. But you'll only recognize this in the other realm. But even our experience right now of it. So because they're so engrossed in what they're doing, and they're like, who cares? There's no end. They're actually, time was moving fast for them. But they're like, hey, it's not even here. The punishment is not even here. But for the one observing them saying they're so corrupt and unjust and evil, it was very slow. Make sense? So Allah says all of us will recognize it was very fast. It's an amazing concept.
The concept of timing changes with the aging and maturity.
And aging too. And by the way, a couple of tips. If you want time to slow down, actually, no, to move faster if you're bored. Like, move. They say turn up the temperature and make your room smell like baby powder. Somehow, in the brain, it triggers it to interpret time as being slower. And there's another thing that was really interesting. They found that dopamine makes us perceive time faster. Makes sense. Dopamine is released when? When you're really enjoying yourself. I mean, you're enjoying yourself, good conversation, stuff like, Zach, like in it. It's like, oh shoot, it's already passed. Because dopamine is being released and we're enjoying ourselves. So time moves faster. But if you're stressed out, anxious, it's the slowest thing ever. Right? So I just wanted to end on that note because what a powerful concept, and it's mentioned in the Quran. And Allah says, just hang in there, be patient, look forward to the time when you look back and it's an hour, right? You're gonna be laughing. So let's laugh at it right now. It's over, brothers and sisters. Wallahi, it is so over. In a blink of an eye, as Allah says. May Allah guide us to the straight path and make us among those who answer His call. May Allah make us among those who, when they reach the age of 40, they make the dua to Allah. رب أوزعني أن أشكر نعمتك التي أنعمت علي وعلى والدي وأن أعمل صالحا ترضاه وأصلح لي في ذريتي إني تبت إليك وإني من المسلمين. Ya Allah, grant me and grant us the ability to be thankful to you for all the gifts that you have blessed us with and that you have blessed our parents with. Ya Allah, grant us the ability to do righteous deeds for the rest of our lives that please you, Ya Allah. Ya Allah, guide and fix our children. Ya Allah, we turn to you and we repent to you. We are amongst the Muslims. Allahumma ameen, Allahumma ameen. Sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. One reminder, homework, inshallah, verse 15, Surah Al-Ahqaf. Please memorize and say this time. Like, this should be like our homework. Remind each other, there's no greater good we can leave this room with today than to make this dua. Don't worry about the Arabic, work on it. At least you learn it in English, learn the meanings. Say those meanings, thankfulness to Allah, being given the ability to be thankful to Allah. For yourself and your parents, do good deeds that please Allah, fix our children, Ya Allah, and Ya Allah, turn to you and repent to you. Very simple. And then learn it in Arabic and see this dua and teach it to others, inshallah. Barakallahu fikum, inshallah. Till next time, Surah Muhammad. Assalamu alaikum.